God is moving mightily here in the Promised Land, Israel. I'm Chaim Mailspin from the Aliyah Return Center, and I want to invite you to come and be part of this prophetic story that's unraveling like a scroll right before our very eyes.
2,700 years ago, God's anointed prophet Isaiah recorded these words. He will choose Israel and will settle them in their own land. Foreigners will join them and unite with the descendants of Jacob.
Today, the Aliyah Return Center is working tirelessly here in the Galilee, Israel, to align ourselves with God's will for the return of His people and the restoration of His land.
2,500 years ago, the return of Israel from Babylonian captivity would have seemed like an impossibility. But it happened, as it is written. 200 years ago, the return of the Jews to their promised homeland seemed like an impossibility. But it is happening, as it is written. Since the formation of the Jewish state in 1948, the anti-Israel bias coming from the United Nations has been festering to the point where international declarations are being made, such as Israel having no history or connection to the Western Wall or Temple Mount, that the tombs of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob are not Jewish heritage sites. This rhetoric is completely backwards and far from the truth.
This year, 70 years since the United Nations voted in favor of establishing the modern state of Israel, we are asking nations to make a public declaration. In contrast to the United Nations anti-Israel bias, we are seeing groups, emissaries, diplomats bear their country's flags together as nations united for Israel. Today, the Aliyah Return Center have the opportunity to restore this derelict boarding school complex where new Olim, Jewish immigrants, can settle in their homeland. With over 20 buildings and a final construction estimate of over $10 million, this may seem like an impossibility, but it is written, and God is faithful to His word.
The way is being made. It is unprecedented that Jewish, Israeli, and international Christian organizations would establish an agreement to work together to restore this rundown facility.
God has provided this location and the essential relationships needed to keep the doors open here. Our task now is to invite the nations to come partake in this work, co-labor with the Lord as He returns His people and restores His land. It's God's will that this return and restoration happens, and it's our privilege to play a part in it. Won't you join us?
Apply today to raise your country's flag in support for Israel and this prophetic work of return and restoration at the Bekat Kinnerot campus with the Aliyah Return Center.